Mayor Dooley, and I am the president of the Citizens Club. Today, we would like to thank our Citizens Club sponsors and our partners, including WMAY, NPR, WUIS, the City of Springfield Audio and Visual Department of the Mayor's Office. I'd also like to thank today's coffee sponsors, Dave Stewart and Gina Kovac, and a special shout out to Tony Thompson and Haley Wilson for the special video tribute they made in honor of Bob Gray, who was our chair and founder for 16 years. And if you would like, donations can still be made in his honor to the Citizens Club, which was his request. Attendance at the Citizens Club is always free. But if you would like to support the work of the club, annual dues are just $30 to become a member, and coffee sponsorship is $100, and we would like you to talk to our treasurer, Chris Atchison, who is in the room. I think he was sitting at the table in front. If you have any questions or if you'd like to join our club, we would love that. This morning, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Josh Koonce with Hoseal Lavigne. I think I said that wrong. You can correct me when you get up here. Hoseal Lavigne, who will reveal the Downtown and Medical District Master Plan. Josh works for an urban planning firm who has managed successful planning projects in Illinois, Indiana, Colorado, and many other states. Josh has been with the Hoseal Lavigne for 6 years. Previously, he was a staff planner, zoning coordinator for the village of Maywood near Chicago. He's a certified planner. Now, the master plan. It's a collaboration among the City of Springfield, represented here this morning by Val Yazel, Director of the City's Office of Planning and Economic Development, and John Stremstifer and Stacy Reed from the Community Foundation of Lincoln Land, Abby Powell, and she's from the Springfield Sangamon Growth Alliance, Ryan Croak. I don't think I see him. He's from the Mid-Illinois Medical District, and Carlos Ortega, Director of Downtown Springfield, Inc. This is a really great group of people, I must say. Josh, thank you for being here this morning. We look forward to your report.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, everyone, for being out here this morning. It's a nice morning here in Springfield. It's good to be with you all. Like Joyce said, we're going to be reviewing or orienting you all to this exciting document. It's been nearly 2 years in the making, and we're very excited to be at this stage with you all where we have a complete draft document and something that's ultimately headed to the city to be a guiding document for the city center, the core of the downtown and the Mid-Illinois Medical District. So it is an exciting point in the process to have something that's gone through a long community outreach and vetting process, and working with the coalition that's guided the process the whole way to make sure that this is really an actionable and results-oriented plan for this important part of your community. Sorry about that. So what I'm going to do today is just give you a little bit of a project overview, kind of an orientation to the plan, about the plan, what is the point of a master plan, what did we do all this for, how is it going to be used, and then I want to walk you through the sections of the document and give you a little bit of an orientation into what's in this document, what you can expect when you get the chance to start flipping through it and using it. It's not just a document for the city or the coalition members, it's a document that will be publicly accessible to the whole community, and you can track along how progress is being made, how things are happening with this important planning document. So first of all, for a master plan, some of the questions we ask when we start off: why do we need this plan, and how can the plan guide the future growth and development of this core area of the community? One of the things that we do when we start a planning process is we take a deep dive, a look at the community's previous plans and studies. And really, this came out of the part of the direction for doing this master plan process came out of an existing plan that the city has on the books. The Next 10 plan is the city's current guiding document, and it included specific recommendations for strengthening the connection between downtown and the medical district, increasing the mix of uses in the urban core, looking at economic development, integrating ongoing projects into the community and into the planning process, and looking at placemaking, making the core of the city more unique, desirable, attractive, and interesting. And then the Next 10 also directed that a master plan for this core area should be realistic and implementable. So no planning process sort of wipes the slate clean and says all previous plans are done and now this is the only direction that you're going to go. It's very nice when you have a good document like the Next 10 that sets up a more detailed study for a specific area of a community. So I think that's an important takeaway. A lot of people will ask, well, what about this planning process that we just did? Why are we doing this again? Planning is an ongoing process. You're constantly looking toward the future and thinking, how can we tweak our urban environment? What are some of the things we can do to make this place function better? And as we look, out 10, 15, 20 years. So the purpose of the master plan is to set a vision, a community-based vision for the future of the core of downtown Springfield in the Mid-Illinois Medical District. It should provide a decision-making framework and establish an expectation for future investment. Sometimes we talk about a master plan for an urban study area like this as a roadmap or a blueprint. Really, if the master plan is sort of doing its job, it's doing a couple things here. It's engaging the community. It's not just pointed toward only what the city can do or only what the coalition members can do or residents, stakeholders, developers, the city's elected and appointed officials, but it's directed more and more toward the whole community. And I'll talk about that in just a second. A good planning document should identify community desires, needs, and aspirations. So where do we want to go as a community for this core area? We did a lot of community outreach that sort of set the stage for that, and I'll also cover that momentarily. It addresses the existing issues and strengths, so sort of the where are we today in this study area. What do we know about this area? What are the things that we're going to need to address that are problematic, and what are some of the things that are strengths that we want to make sure are carried forward into the future? A master plan also guides a broad range of topics at the policy level. So this is a policy document. What are the things that the city and its partners should be doing? What are the policies that we should be thinking about? What is the direction that we want to go? It's not a regulatory document. It's not a zoning code or a set of design guidelines. It's a framework for decision making. And then it's dynamic as well. So just like the Next 10 sort of set that toehold language for a more detailed dive, this plan may also tee up some future studies or support grant funding for example, it could tee up a parking study or a detailed streetscape master plan, build-ready streetscape components for the core of your community. So there's updates that can be made and further studies that can be taken to make sure that we're actually getting the things that we say we want in our master plan. A master plan document like this is very important. So like I said, if you take away one thing away from this presentation this morning, a planning document like this is a decision-making framework. It's a policy guide. It doesn't mean that everything in here is going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years, but it's a framework for decision-making. So when development proposals or projects are evaluated by elected and appointed officials, could turn to this and say, what did our master plan say? Does this proposal basically fit with the guidance of our policy document? It can help establish an expectation for future investment. That's good for elected and appointed officials as well as for developers. You know, they have fair certainty when they come in. This is a document that guides what is, you know, a group of people has basically agreed that this is pretty palatable in the core of our community, and this is what we might want to see. So it's used to evaluate and inform development proposals. It does set the foundation for the regulatory framework, so there may be zoning code tweaks that come out of this as a result of this plan. If we articulate a type of development we want, but we don't have the tools in our code to get that development, there may be some tweaks and updates that might need to happen coming out of this. Any good planning document, whether it's a master plan for a focused area like this or a county-wide plan, helps a community coordinate initiatives. So no community is an island. There's things that exist in partner organizations that are going to have to help get things done. There's also you know, projects that extend outside of study area boundaries. You think about like the 3rd Street corridor. That's not just inside this study area, but it extends further out, and it's going to have some partnerships to help it get done. A master plan like this can support the CIP. It can support the city's short-term budgeting. How do we want to allocate funds to this area? Let's look at what the master plan says and think about this as we do our short-term budgeting. And then, like I mentioned, it can set the stage for future studies and grant funding. And very importantly, again, I want to hit on this one, inform and educate the whole community. So if you were to pick up a planning document from several decades ago, you'd probably find that it's very text heavy, you know, a whole book of text and a map or something like that slapped at the back. Not very user friendly, probably sits on the city planner's shelf and is referenced once in a while, and you might need a degree in land use law to interpret some of the terminology in here. One of the directions that the field of planning has gone, that the coalition tasked us with, and that we as a firm have gone, is plans that are in plain English, lots of photos, easy to understand maps, definitions, if there is a technical term, definitions that are explained right in the text so that it's not hard to interpret what we're talking about. You don't need to be a planning expert or a zoning expert or a land use lawyer to interpret what's going on in this document. It is the community's document. So we had a 6-step process. Like I said, it's been about a 2-year process, which seems long. It's not out of the realm of normal for a long-range study like this to take some time and make sure that we cover all the bases and hear from everybody in a process like this. So I'd say that we're right in the sweet spot of normal in terms of process, but we work through these 6 steps with the coalition and with the community, and again, we're very happy to be in step 6, looking at the final downtown and medical district master plan. Getting into the draft plan overview, these are the sections of the plan, and I'm going to walk you through most of them at a pretty high level. I'm not going to get too detailed, but we'll save some time for discussion and questions at the end. So right off the bat, there's some introductory information. What's the study area? Where are we in the community? Where is the master plan study area? What's the purpose? And an introduction to the coalition, the guiding body that worked with Hoseal Lavigne throughout the process. I want to stay on this slide for just a second. We did have an excellent program of community involvement. Very good turnout at the business workshop, the community visioning workshop. We had a nice slate of community stakeholder conversations and focus groups with a variety of participants up front. And then even last night we had 80 plus people attend the open house, and you can see the interest here this morning. So when you talk about participation, this is what you want to see in a planning process. You want a lot of community involvement so that this isn't done in a vacuum. Any planning process like this, there's a variety of ingredients that sort of go into it. There's planning best practices and and knowledge of the community, field reconnaissance. But community involvement is a big part of this. So when we hear directly from the community things that they want to see, that you all want to see in your city center, that's an important part of what weighs into this process. So hopefully if some of you had the opportunity to participate in one of these meetings in the past, you can see your fingerprints on this document a little bit in some way. Part of the introductory material in the document is a study area profile. Up front, we knew that we had to define the study area. We were looking mostly at the urban core of the city. So that's how we came to the study area boundary. It includes part of the medical district boundary and the core of the downtown, and has a focus on this specific urban area. What is the core of our community? So this is the study area boundary that we came to. Up front, as part of our due diligence, we did a field reconnaissance program where we went up and down every street and corridor in the study area. We did both a walking and driving survey and put together an assessment of existing land use. What's on the ground today? What do we know about the study area? What are some of the things that we know are here that we're going to have to be dealing with? And I'll get into that a little bit further with the land use influences section. I should have maybe mentioned them up front, but we did work with a couple of partner firms. We worked with CMT to evaluate transportation and mobility in the study area. We worked with Site Design to evaluate placemaking, streetscape, and public realm in the study area. And then we also worked with Johnson to assess the market and demographics. So when I said that, where are we today, part of the process up front, it was not just our firm, Hoseal Lavigne, with a specialty in urban planning, but these other firms who are also evaluating the study area in these specific categories. Jumping ahead a little bit, each of those documents was combined into an existing conditions memorandum, and all of that, as well as detailed outreach summaries for each of the events that we did, is included in the appendix at the back of this document. So this slide just highlights some of the market and demographic key takeaways that come out of that Johnson report on the study area. A core component of this plan and of any planning process is the vision statement and guiding principles. So where do we want to go? What's the point of all this? A vision statement is lofty, it's aspirational. It's, if I were to just present you with the vision statement and say, here's your plan, you would say, okay, this sounds great, we can all get behind this, but what are we going to do to get there? And that's exactly what a vision statement should do. It should be a little bit aspirational, not hallucinatory, but it should provide some direction that, based on community outreach, where do we want to go for this document? So the vision statement is included here on the left. I won't read it out, but we did a lot of tweaking and wordsmithing and conversations with the coalition to make sure that we got this just right. And this is really one part of the plan, the vision and the guiding principles, that point right back to all that community outreach that we did with the business community, with the community at large, and with those key stakeholder interviews. We also settled on 4 guiding principles that sort of thread over to the different sections of the plan. So a livable city center, which is about housing and bringing people into the city center. Defining a place and building a community, which is about the public realm and placemaking. How do people experience the area when they pass through it? Growing resiliently, which is about economic development, keeping the businesses we have and attracting new ones that are suitable for this area in the community. And then a connected and accessible guiding principle, which is about transportation for all modes, from walking to driving in the study area. So you can see how those sort of map to the different sections of the plan. At its core, this is a land use document. So we're talking about what sort of future uses do we want to see in the community. If you look at a land use plan for a community-wide land use plan, it can be a little bit different. In that case, we would assign a specific land use to each area, but when we zoom in on a focused area like this, we often do what we call a functional sub-area approach, and I'm going to show you a little bit what that's about. Before I do, though, we took a look and identified a variety of what you would call planning influences. Things that are influencing the way this area operates and functions at the center of the city. So, of course, the Capitol complex, not within the study area. The Capitol complex does some dedicated planning and is sort of a whole different beast in terms of planning for that key area of the community, but it still has a heavy influence on what happens in the study area. There's a lot of people working there. There's a lot of people coming there. So obviously they filter back out into the city core, and you want to see them participating in the core of the city as well. The Mid-Illinois Medical District, a hugely important influence on this area. This is an area that a lot of jobs, again, a lot of people working, a lot of investment in the north side of the study area. So that's that's one of the influences that we discussed. Enos Park neighborhood, also contained within the official medical district boundary, but is a historic and influential neighborhood that sits right at the north side of the study area. There's a lot of publicly owned buildings in the study area. When you have a capital city, obviously there's a lot more public buildings in a city center or a downtown than you would see in other communities. And that can be a plus because they're often occupied and there's workers and stuff in there. Some of them are not on the tax roll, so that can be a little bit harder to deal with when you want to see investment and activity in your downtown or your city center. We took a look at the influence of historic resources, and then a big one, parking. There's a lot of surface parking within the study area. And surface parking, there was a trend toward that in the 60s, 50s and 60s to improve more areas for surface parking, and there's a lot of it still remaining. So these parking areas, we didn't do a detailed parking study. That's one of these things that could maybe be a result of this document, but you want a right-sized parking in an area like this. So some of these maybe are opportunity sites to think about what could start to plug in some of the holes in the urban fabric. So considering all those influences, we put together a set of what we call functional sub-areas. So again, unlike a citywide comprehensive plan or something like that, when you drill down in a study area like this, you want to look at these different functional sub-areas and think, like, within this concise area that we're looking at, what are the differences and what are some different areas even within this small study area. So there's one example page on the right-hand side here where we are talking about the downtown core, which is the orange area. For each of these functional sub-areas, I think we have 11 of them. We took a look at the built form, what it is and what it should be, what are the building heights, what's the parking situation, and what's the mix of uses that sort of makes up this functional sub-area within our study area. We also took a look at opportunity sites. I had a question last night, what's the difference between an opportunity site and a catalyst site? I'd say opportunity sites is sort of the umbrella term. There's a lot of opportunity sites in the study area. Infill sites, catalyst sites, parking lot redevelopment opportunities, some areas along the 9th Street corridor, underperforming buildings, and what we call third places. So opportunity sites is a collective term, and then we sort of divided them out into a variety of different types of opportunity sites. One example, the catalyst sites, these, you could think of these as, if something were to happen on these sites, maybe it could really trigger additional development and investment. So prominent corners, major intersections. And for a few of these, we did some 3D models to show not architecturally exactly what's going to happen here, but what could happen here within the context of your current zoning and your current, the current development proposals that you get, what could happen on these particular sites. So these little diagrams are meant to be illustrative and to spark interest from the community, perhaps from the landowner, from a developer who's submitting a proposal. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe this could actually happen here, and the community could be behind something that generally fits this envelope or this this little 3D diagram. We did that for a couple of areas. Another Catalyst site that we didn't do a 3D for, of course, is the Governor's Mansion Park. That appears to be coming soon. So, of course, a Central Park area would be catalytic in the community. Part of the land use and development section, we have a housing strategy. One of the goals of the plan is to increase residential activity, increase people living in the study area. So we identified some different housing areas for neighborhood infill and increasing housing options right here adjacent to the community core, which would drive activity. And then building on the market study that Johnson did, we provided some economic development policy and direction as well within this land use chapter. Moving on to public realm activation, this chapter of the plan is really all about how people, when they're in this study area, how do they experience the study area, and how should they be experiencing it. So you'll find things about increasing safety, like lighting, activating open spaces. There's a section on third places, encouraging a vibrant core, year-round programming, pilot programs and things that could be considered in the study area, improving the pedestrian experience and reinforcing the community identity. So unlike land use and development, here we're talking a lot about the streetscape, things like, again, like lighting, murals. What does it mean to have a vibrant core and several nodes of activity within the city center? We took a look at park service area. Do people have access to open and green space here, and what are some recommendations to increase that where possible? And then put together as another tier of opportunity sites, what are some third place sites? Does anyone know the term third places? Heard that? Okay, quite a few. So third places, you have the place where you live, the place where you work, and where are the places that you go to spend your time and your money when you have that time to spend. So working with site, we identified a series of potential ideal third places as a subset of those opportunity sites. This section also takes a look at proposed gateways. So what are some of the entrance points into the study area, and how would we want to identify those to make sure that people know, you've arrived in a place and you're here. This is an area that you want to be, and you know that you're now in the city center. There's also a transportation section, a transportation component to this. So really this is about balancing a variety of modes, transportation modes, from the most vulnerable, walking, to up to driving, which is the least vulnerable mode of transportation. So how do we balance that in a place that we heard over and over again we want to be more walkable and bikeable? So this section really takes a complete streets approach, which says, as street projects are initiated and planned, consider all users of the road. So not to say that every single road is going to have a bike lane or something like that, but to the extent possible, those should be considered. Bike lanes, sidewalks, things like streetscape bump outs, street furniture, all that kind of stuff. Consider that stuff as these projects occur. There's a modal hierarchy section, so it establishes priority corridors for each transportation mode, for vehicles, pedestrians, bicyclists, and transit, and optimizes the space in the public right-of-way. This vehicular priority section is about improvements for traffic and transportation flow, improved wayfinding, and parking near key assets. The walking and biking section of this identifies some roads that would be very suitable for connected bike network with true dedicated separated bike lanes and bike parking. And then the walking assessment is about creating pedestrian priority streets, not to say that they would be closed to cars, but streets that truly have the best pedestrian infrastructure for moving around in the corridor and connecting both north-south and east-west. And lastly, the transportation priority section, or the transit priority, public transportation, prioritizes certain streets for potential public transit improvements and connections. Perhaps most importantly, and going back to that old plans that might just sit on the planner's shelf, there's an implementation strategy in this document. This is all about what are the approaches to managing a downtown or a city center. What are some funding mechanisms that we can use? How are we going to work with our partners to get this stuff done, to make sure that this plan doesn't collect dust? It's not to say that every single action in this plan is going to be completed, but there's a framework here for getting funding, partnering, and working together to move the needle on some of these policies and recommendations. We pair this with, again, a variety of tools and funding sources. And then one of my favorite parts of any planning document is a good action matrix, which takes every recommendation of the plan, distills it down to its action, identifies a timeline and partner if appropriate. The tone of the implementation strategy is that the city sort of carries the water on most of these things, but there's going to be partnerships that are going to be needed to get these things done. So it's almost like a checklist that you could turn to if you're just thinking, how are we sort of progressing on this document? You can move down the line and see what are some things in a sort of a bite-sized approach that we can work on year to year and measure our progress. And then lastly, like I mentioned, the appendix, we did include all the supporting documentation that we put together along the way, the existing conditions memo, each of the outreach summaries, the market study, the public realm assessment, the transportation assessment. You'll find all of those supporting documents that sort of built, the building blocks of this planning process in the appendix. So if you're wondering, well, this short summary of the visioning workshop, what did they really talk about in there? You can turn to the appendix and actually read the summarization from that workshop. Next steps for this, next month, we'll be working with the city to present it to council and go through that process with them. So I do want to say thank you. I really appreciate everyone coming out and listening to this. And I think at this moment, I just wanted to acknowledge the coalition, right? And open it up to the coalition if you each had anything to say about this process, and also take questions.
That was a great presentation.
And we are going to open it up to the collaborators. We'll start with Val.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Josh. First of all, I'd like to express Mayor Misty Bush's apologies for not being able to attend this morning. Her grandmother passed away this week, so she is at that funeral this morning. So she just wanted to make sure that you all knew there was a good reason why she wasn't here. First thing I'd like to say is thank you for the CEO program. I have been in and out of participating with the CEO program for years, so thank you so much for being here. You're our future. We want you here. You can go away for a little bit to college and stuff, but we really want you back. So we'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts, your ideas. And Bruce, even if they give you something in a week, let us know, because we'd really, really like to hear from you what you'd like to see in our community, what would keep you here, what would make you want to raise a family here. So thank you so much for that. So as you heard, this went over a 2-year period, so it covered 2 mayoral administrations. So I will say to you that I'm a little late to the game. You know, it was almost a year in the making before I got here. So I am so incredibly blessed that I have fantastic partners here within the city that I can depend on to help us with this whole planning process. So the city is charged with implementing this process, and several of the things, and Josh mentioned one of them, and I think this is an important statistic for you to know. Is it 68% of the It's over 60% of the parcels in the downtown area do not generate any taxes. So no property taxes. So that is a lot. I believe I've heard before, most downtowns in areas, urban cores like this, that might be 25% of the parcels, but ours are over 60. So that presents a huge challenge for us. But one of the things that I am excited about is to have this. I do have a plan in my office right now, which is called the comprehensive plan, that does not collect dust. It is opened very regularly. Now, it's a land plan for across the whole city. So I'm lucky to have that, but now I've got an additional plan for a specific area in the downtown. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm excited to work with these partners. We've had people just jump in and say, we can help you with this, we can help you with that. So this is an exciting time for us, and I think I'll just turn it over to the Growth Alliance now for their comments. And Brian or Abby? Abby? All right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Val. So my name is Abby Powell, and I'm with the Springfield Sangamon Growth Alliance, which is the economic development organization for Springfield and Sangamon County. So we look at this plan through a economic development lens, of course. And as Val mentioned, this is a over 2-year journey that we've been on, and we view that as a feature, not a bug, right? We're glad for this plan to span several administrations. We know that it is aspirational and it's long-term. As with most economic development projects, you don't get it done in a year. These are long-term plans and long-term projects, so we're glad to get to this point. So Val mentioned an important part that we discovered downtown and in the medical district is that lack of tax generation, which puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage when we are looking to make improvements to infrastructure and development in our core, which also points to one of our core tenets is growing resiliently. So one thing that we can do is try to diversify our employment base, and this plan is key to that. We're able to take this plan out to developers and to businesses and talk about what the community has already decided we want to see in downtown in our medical district. That gives those folks some certainty when they come to our community, that they can expect support from our community members and from our elected officials, that they're going to be able to see their project to completion. In fact, we had a conversation with a developer very recently in the last couple of weeks where we said, we'd really like to get some housing downtown. Are you able to come here and do multifamily housing development? And he said, do you have a plan? Can you show me the pages in the plan that reflect that the community really wants these things? So it was very timely for us, and we're excited to be able to use this plan to market Springfield and tell people this is a great place to be, to live. You know, it's important for us. Did I miss anything you want to talk about? Okay, so I would like to turn it over to John Stromstorfer in the back. He is part of the important origin story of our plan, and he can talk about the way the Community Foundation has been involved and how they'd like to use this going forward.
Thanks, Abby. As she said, I'm John Stromstorfer. I'm the president and CEO of the Community Foundation for the Land of Lincoln. I wear a second hat in this coalition. I'm also a commissioner of the Mid-Illinois Medical District Commission. Our chairperson, Ryan Crow, couldn't be here this morning, so he asked that if there's time, I could speak for both. So as Josh showed in one of the early slides, there was a public visioning process that the Community Foundation fostered back in 2020 that became known as the Next 10. It came up with dozens and dozens of ideas for a better community. And I gotta say, there were not more ideas for any other of the projects than the downtown. People care about the downtown in this community. Everybody cares about cool places, good restaurants, vibrant cores of their community. So I wasn't surprised that that was the case for the Next 10 Visioning Project. And so those of us that were responsible for figuring out what to do with all those comments from the public, we decided, well, we better start with a plan. Because if you don't have a plan, you're probably not going to get anywhere. And I think this is a wonderful day that we finally have this to reveal in its full form to the community, and I'm excited to see what comes of it. As a medical district, we also need this plan to have a more vibrant medical district. And the whole thought here from the offset was to combine the two, or as I've said very eloquently, I think, we want to smush them together a little bit. That's a planning term, right, Josh? So I do think this is intentional to do this work together for these very important districts of the city center. I'm very excited for it because whether it be reviewing applications for not-for-profits at the Community Foundation with committees or government making decisions, if you don't have a plan, you're probably not going to get the funding you want to do the things you want to see done. So if you don't have the plan, you're not going to get the money to do the stuff, is my kind of simple way of putting it. And I think we got a better shot now to actually see good things happen in these districts with this completed. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Carlos with DSI.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Ortega. I'm the new Executive Director of Downtown Springfield Incorporated. I've been here about 8 months now, and I want to mention that I am not here of my own being. It's taken generations of my family to get to the place where I'm at, and a plan like this I want to really emphasize is the visioning portion of it. At the last sentence there, it says, creating a sense of belonging. And when you think about a master plan like this, and you think about the history that has supported the development of the downtown, one goes to think of the history and the ancestors and the people who've actually made this a possibility. And one of those abilities is to create that sense of belonging here in downtown Springfield. So as Downtown Springfield Incorporated, I look to contributing to the overall impact of this master plan with the coalition partners in the community. And I really do think that this is a roadmap for us to be guided into the future and create opportunities for future generations.
Thanks, everyone. That was great. And with that, we're going to turn it over to questions. John Kelker's going to come around with this microphone. So there are so many that I'm sure have questions. We'd like you to stand up and say who you are and ask a question. We don't need any speeches today.
Show of hands. Yes, sir.
John Kirkestner, University of Illinois. Is there a consideration for tram or some sort of small train service going east-west, north-south through the city as far as long-term, so that there's more accessibility instead of having to add a lot more parking, giving more accessibility to people that don't have personal vehicles or don't want to have to use their personal vehicle to visit downtown?
Before I answer, I do want to just point out that I also have my colleague Jack Carso in the back who worked on this project as well. So if I'm forgetting anything and you want to chime in, Jack, let me know, please. I don't think there's specifically consideration for new light rail. There is the public transportation framework. Retrofitting a community for new light rail can be very tough and expensive, but better transit overall is a consideration in the transportation portion. Sure, Abby.
I just want to add to that in terms of active transportation, which is I think what your question is going to, and I appreciate it. And also This plan doesn't stand on its own. So we at the Sangamon County level, like at the county level, are working on an active transportation plan that considers public transportation in a variety of modes, also pedestrian traffic and bicycle traffic, along with vehicular traffic. And those transportation plans are being done right now. And all these planning efforts talk to one another intentionally, and part of the downtown core is also considered in that active transportation plan, and it's called Connect. So if you're looking for information about active transportation, if anybody is and wants to engage with that plan, this is a great time to give public comment and feedback and make recommendations about what you'd like to see. Again, that's Connect. Is there a website, Bob?
There is a website.
There's a website. I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head. Oh, Molly Burns is here. She knows.
If you go to www.sscrpc.com, it's on the front page. And it's, the grant is through the Illinois Department of Transportation, funded with federal highway dollars, and the Springfield Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission is actually leading that planning effort. And it just got started about 2 months ago, and we'll be working throughout the year to put it into place.
Can you repeat that again, your actual website?
www.sscrpc.com.
All right, thanks.
Another question? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Good morning, I'm Janet Stover, and I have, I guess, a twofold question. The first is there a location that we can review the plan in its entirety? And the second is, one of the frustrations that I feel as a citizen is the number of plans that we've had, and I know that you've said that planning is a dynamic process, and I believe that to be true. But is there anything built into the plan that on an annual basis, there is a report back to the citizens of Springfield about what we've decided to invest in or how we're moving the plan forward?
Two good ones. So I believe, if
The
I'm,
city has, it's on city's website, it's on the SSGA website, is it on your website? Not yet. Masterplan.com.
SpringfieldMasterplan.com. We did do a dedicated URL for this. So that's the project website, and there's a documents tab, and you can download the full document there. As far as sort of that implementation check-in, different cities do it different ways. I think that will be part of the task of the city to figure out how they want to report back progress or have check-ins. But oftentimes for a long-range study like this, there's sort of like a 2-year check-in, a 5-year check-in, and then by the time you hit 7 to 10 years, sometimes there can be things we didn't even predict, and it might be time for some planning updates. So I know sometimes it can feel like, oh, we just did that. I've worked in communities where they think they just did their planning process and it was 20 years ago. And there's a lot of things that have changed. So it really is a dynamic process. The action matrix is one of the key ways to track this progress along the way, and different communities report back on how that progress is going in a variety of different ways. So, sure.
Hi, I'm Ryan McCready with the Growth Alliance. I work with Abby. I've talked to a lot of individuals about the size of this plan. It's 270 pages with the appendices to it, and there's been some concern about the time it takes to download it to read it. So I'm not an IT professional, but one tip I have is to just read it in your web browser. If you don't try to download it, you're going to be able to move through the plan a lot quicker. If you decide to download it, start the download process. The lights might dim a little bit in the house. Go get a cup of coffee and come back. So just so you know, it's a very large document. What I've learned is if I read it in my web browser, I can flip through it a lot quicker than trying to actually download it to either your iPad or your laptop or anything. So just a tip, take a peek at it.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think we are going to put it in 2 sections: the plan itself, which is only about 100 and something pages, and then the appendix will have that separate link, so you don't have to do the whole thing.
I'm Fletcher Farrar. What are the considerations for historic preservation in the downtown area?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. That was one of the, when I might have gone through it quickly, but one of the key planning influences, obviously, there's a lot of historic buildings. And I would say through the outreach process, most people tended to agree that those are things that you want to preserve and maintain. So no planning process, no good plan is, again, is just about wiping the slate clean, even when you're talking about the built environment. There's things that you want to see maintained through the future that contribute to the character and the way people experience an area. So the plan does recognize that that's a major influence on the study area.
I'm Karen Witter, and I'm wondering how you're looking at both short-term versus long-term issues. There's a lot of really great things on the horizon that are going to have a huge impact on downtown, but right now downtown is pretty dead, and people seem to want to stay on the west side of town. The impact of the fire is still happening, so how does the plan address short-term issues in making our town vibrant, while these things that are undoubtedly going to take longer will take time?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I heard about the fire, and that's sorry to hear about that. There's, in that action matrix, there's things that are going to be short term. We can tackle that next year. A minor update to the zoning code, for example, that's something that could be done very quickly with minimal budget, minimal effort, and probably completely in the purview of the city. And then there's some things that are going to be longer term that are going to take partnerships and identifying funding, and it's going to be a much longer road. And the plan has all of those itemized in that implementation action matrix.
I'm Arthur Davison, and I was wondering if you had any recommendations on how you'd lower the percentage of the. You guys talked about a property tax percentage at 60% downtown, and I was wondering if you had any recommendations on how to lower that percentage.
That's a good one. I mean, there's not any way to take those public buildings that aren't on the tax rolls. It makes planning for the area a little bit tougher, but many of those structures are also, there's offices in there, there's people who are coming to the city center. So an asset of them is that Springfield has sort of a built-in reason for people to always come here and always want to be in this area, because this is where things are happening. Other downtowns that don't have that can fluctuate a little bit more. If a major employer leaves or something like that, that can really affect a community's downtown. So there are some recommendations in there. I don't know if I could articulate every single one, but it's definitely a planning challenge, but it's also an asset to have all these public buildings and things that aren't on the tax roll. They're attracting a lot of people who are spending money, and hopefully more and more experiencing the downtown and spending time in the downtown and city center area.
Another question on this side of the room.
Thank you for the report this morning. Joe McMenamin, property owner downtown and former alderman. John, could you give us just a couple of what you think to be the most important action items on a short-term basis? Thank you.
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I don't know if I could say any specific most important. There's a lot of short-term action items, like thinking of these, which streets are we going to prioritize for pedestrian improvements first. Bikeway improvements can be relatively short-term, but require more funding when you're talking about on-street markings. The building on the 3rd Street corridor and preparing for that, that's a incoming project, and starting to capitalize on that. The Armory redevelopment, I think, is a big one that this plan has some actions around to capitalize on. I don't know if you guys want to say what you think maybe are your most important short terms.
The plan for the 3rd Street corridor was one of the first ones that came to my mind. So you mentioned.
Sure, good, yeah.
One question on this side.
I'm Robert Mazrum. I'm involved in a number of art-related projects downtown, and I have a question. You used two phrases that I thought were appropriate, that there was a lot of this is an aspirational document, and then toward the end of your talk, you talked about moving the needle. A whole lot of us are interested in that second phrase. And so my question is rather simple, which is what's next? You know, what happens in November, and how does this trickle down from a couture fashion into a sweatshirt that we can all buy?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, well, this will become the city's document. It will be publicly available, and it has, I think, the one thing that's a strength of this this particular process for a downtown or city center master plan is that, you know, a lot of times when we go out to a community, we'll form sort of an ad hoc steering committee. They'll guide the process, and then the plan lands firmly in the city's court, and the steering committee sort of sometimes they maintain, and there's a guiding committee that focuses on the downtown. But here we have a coalition that's that supported the process throughout, and that is also going to be keeping tabs on the progress of this document. So it's almost like a built-in team that's going to be considering this, so that it's not just all on the city. And that's definitely a feature here that is different than some of the other communities that we work on. So I think yeah, it can be tough. One of the exercises that we did up front is with the business community in particular, was an issues and opportunities exercise, and we would get, you know, we had several poster boards on the wall and we had a long list of 60 plus issues. I don't know if any of you were there at that business workshop. And when you look at all those issues, it's like, oh my goodness, how are we going to prioritize? What are we going to do? And then we did a rating and ranking exercise to start to see what floats to the top. And that's exactly what a document like this can do. The city can track along with its partners and see which things can we reasonably bite off this year, what's maybe next year, so that it's not this daunting just wall of things to do. There's reasonable and actionable steps, and a built-in partnership coalition that's going to continue to guide the process and make sure that these things get done. I've not seen a plan yet where every action gets completed. So that does go back to that sort of ongoing process. We don't have it's a plan. It's not a crystal ball. So. There's likely going to be some things we didn't anticipate, hopefully good things, and we'll keep moving along. So, yeah.
Time for two more quick questions. One right here in the middle.
Hi, I'm Linda from Springfield Vintage. I have attended all of the public meetings that we've had for this. I'm representing downtown businesses right now. I'm sorry, we want the future more than anything, but we need now. And we need you guys. We need you guys bad. We need everybody here because we're not making it. I don't know what else to say. I'll be celebrating my 8th. You'll be on your 7th. She's right next to the fire. Elizabeth, one of our grant owners. You're on your 2nd year. Custom Cup. 10 years downtown. Came from the farmer's market, came from the farmer's market, came from the farmer's market. We're doing things right downtown. We're doing it right. But it's not working. We need your help. We need every single one of you. Please come to our events. We've got a downtown this weekend with Not So Freaky Friday. We've got the parade. Come into our shops. You come downtown to go to events. You don't come into our shops. We need you. Thank you.
Last question.
I'm Blake Willen, and my question was, like, what are you going to do to keep people away from the west side? I feel like I can get all my entertainment, my food, my shopping, all that on the west side. So what are you going to do to keep people not away from there, but draw them to downtown, rather than having to go to, like, Wabash and Veterans and stuff like that?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question, and it's common in so many communities where there's, the historic city center, and then there's an area that is great probably, but maybe is to a certain extent cannibalizing what used to be in the core of the community. No shade thrown on any West Siders or West Side businesses. There's an experience in a downtown and an urban center that we just heard about. You can't get that in, it takes a lot of work to duplicate that elsewhere in a community, and it's sort of built in an urban center that you have here. So there's a lot of assets that are already in a dense, walkable urban core that are just not going to be replicated out there. And that gets at what we're seeing more and more, a trend for retail and for the way people want to spend their money is trending towards more of an experience. And there's things that, it's kind of what the whole plan is about, is things we can do to build up that experience, attract people who want to live here, and support the small businesses that have chosen to locate here. So I know that there's probably offerings out there that you're not going to ever find in this core of a city, but there's a lot of good stuff in the core of a city that are never going to be out there.
So one of the things the coalition talked a lot about with the downtown and medical district master plan is attracting more residential units into downtown Springfield. And we've had, over the last few years, the Growth Alliance has worked with the city. We've had a couple proposals come forward, a couple development proposals come forward to add residential units. They weren't perfect in their presentation. I think that's a nice way to say that. But even in that discussion, something? Checked. There we go. Even in that discussion, we got a lot of pushback from people that said, no one will pay that much for an apartment. Nobody will do that. So we are working hard. The coalition partners are working hard to attract residential units into downtown. We need to do that. We need to reuse some of the office buildings that don't have as many people working in them anymore because they're working remotely. So one thing we all can do is when we get a developer interested in adding residential units into the downtown of the medical district, let's support them. Let's speak positively about, we have this plan that says we need to have it. In our work, we talk to employers every day that say their employees want to live downtown. We know the occupancy rate is nearly 100% for units that are downtown. So as we get someone stepping forward to invest and redo a building and add residential units, as a community, we need to support those individuals also. Because if we get more people living downtown, it's going to help the issue that Linda just talked about. It's going to help a lot of things. Once you get the folks down here, then we will also get the additional services. So when we get an opportunity, let's get behind it.
Thank you. Let's give one more round of applause to all the people that talked today. We at the Citizens Club have a vision too, and that's to fill the room downstairs at the LRS Theater for our future programs. So I hope all of you come back next month when our meeting will be on the election results, and that's going to be on November 22, 2024 elections. What happened and what does that mean for you? And finally, before I close, I just want to give you a brief notice about what's happening at UIS Monday night. There are 4 Ukrainian women who are going to be here to show their award-winning documentary film on Mariupol. It was filmed on location during the first days of the Russian invasion of Ukraine in the spring of 2022. The Ukrainian filmmaker's widow will be here. Her husband was tortured and killed by the Russian troops while making this film. They have a harrowing story to tell in their own words. So please mark your calendars for Monday night, October 28, 6 p.m. at Brookins Auditorium at UIS. This film presentation is free and open to the public. And with that, thanks to everyone who came this morning, and let's keep it up. Have a great weekend.